Hi there, my name's Sherrod Morris and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Graphly. Prior to building software, our digital marketing agency was responsible for implementing thousands of campaigns and funnels for various clients across various industries. My promise to you is that by the end of this training, you will know the exact metrics that you need to track to drive growth, sustainability, and predictability in your business. So let's get started. All right, guys, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to play full on and to also follow the course step by step. These ideas build upon each other, and if you skip forward, I'm afraid that you'll miss out on a lot of important information. So let's start out with a little fun exercise as it relates to numbers. All right, so what I'd like to ask you to do is to choose a number between 1 and 9. And if you happen to be watching this, maybe with another teammate or with other people in the room, let's have everyone do it, but do not say your number out loud. Just think of the number, something between 1 and 9. Now, the first thing I want you to do is to take that number and now multiply it by 3. You got it? You've got a new number. I want you to multiply the new number now by 3 again. From there, if you ended up with 2 digits, like let's say my number was 26, I want you to add those 2 digits together so that you arrive at a single digit. So 2 plus 6 for me would be 8. So go ahead and do that now. And now I want you to go ahead and subtract 5. And let me ask you, did you get 4? Now, how did I do that? How did I guess your number when you could have started at any number between 1 and 9? Well, there's something interesting going on here. There's a pattern. And this is what it is. Any number, when multiplied by 9, will result in a number that, when added the 2 digits together, always equal 9. So as soon as we took care of that multiplication process, suddenly everyone who had chosen a number was already at 9. I asked you to subtract 5 and everyone ends up at 4. Let's do one more real quick. This one's really fun. All right, so again, we're going to start out. Go ahead and choose a number between 1 and 9. Don't say it out loud if you're with others. And the first thing I want you to do is to take that number and double it, okay? Then go ahead and add 9. Once you've got that number, go ahead and subtract 3. Now I want you to go ahead and divide that by 2. I'll give you a little time because I know some of us we don't do division very often. Once you've done that, subtract the original number, that original number that you chose between 1 and 9, subtract that from the current value that you have, and my guess is you probably ended up with 3. Now, how does that one work? Because we're not multiplying by 9 anymore, right? Well, if you go back to algebra in school, do you remember when we used to subtract and balance things out? This is an algebra balancing things out. So first I asked you to double your number. We'll pretend your number is x. So we got 2x on the board here. Then I asked you to add 9 to it. Asked you to subtract 3, which gets us back to 2x plus 6. And then asked you to divide it by 2. And lastly, to subtract your number, which is x, and that arrives at 3. So everyone will always arrive at 3. Now, guys, why do I have us go through this exercise at the beginning? In my experience in working with businesses and asking them, why are you tracking your leads? Or why aren't you paying attention to what you've collected versus what you've invoiced? Some real common things continue to come up. And that is that people have had bad experiences with numbers, whether it's getting bad grades in school, always feeling like they're arriving late, whether it's taxes and the IRS. There's some subconscious stuff going on with a lot of us where we think numbers are inherently bad, that they're out to get us or to work against us. And it just couldn't be further from the truth. One of the first things I'd like to help you learn is how to identify what is limiting the growth in your business. And to do that, I have a parable or an analogy to really help us understand this concept. It's called Bill's Pipes. So Bill is a landowner in Texas. He has a really large parcel of land and he has 2 neighbors. The first neighbor is Walter, and Walter has a really large lake on his property, and Howard is his other neighbor on the other side who has a small lake. Now, as Bill gets to know his neighbors, he finds out that Walter actually doesn't want a big lake. He'd actually prefer it much smaller. And on the other hand, Howard would really like a large lake, but he doesn't have the means to grow it or expand it. So he ends up talking with both of them. He talks with Walter and says, hey, Walter, if I were able to help you remove some of this water, could we negotiate some type of price per gallon? And I'd be happy to help you do that. And they agree on a set price per gallon. Then he approaches Howard and he says, Howard, if I were able to deliver water to you and help you grow your lake, What would that be worth? And they negotiate a price per gallon. And so Bill's really excited about this because he sees an opportunity. So he begins looking around his ranch to see, what he has available to try and to make this happen. And the first thing he finds is an old pump. And as he continues to look around, he starts to find pipes. And he's got pipes of all different sizes, but he's creative and ingenuitive, and he gets it all pieced together to where he can turn on the pump and water begins flowing from Walters Lake to Howard's Lake. And things are going really well, and he's making money from Walter and he's making money from Howard, but he realizes that things aren't flowing as quickly as he'd like. Walter wants a small lake by a certain date, and Howard's got an event at his home where he wants a large lake. And so Bill realizes, I could really increase my profits and serve my neighbors and help them achieve their goals much quicker if I actually made a switch and I switched out this first pipe. That first pipe was so skinny, it was just limiting the flow. Now, when Bill made this switch, the flow began to increase. Now, what Bill was dealing with was something called the law of constraints. The law of constraints basically states that in any system, at any given point, there is only one constraint that is limiting that system. Now, this is not an original idea of mine. This is actually out of a book that I read called The Goal, and it's by a professor named Eliyahu M. Goldratt, and I'm going to highly recommend that as a side piece of homework, you go check out this book. But it helps you understand that, hey, if you have any system in any environment in life or in business, there's always going to be one thing, one bottleneck, one restraint, one limitation that is impeding the flow of that system. Now, in business, we often create systems to help us generate profit or revenue. And I like to refer to this as the path to profit. Now, the path to profit are the exact steps that are required to put money in your bank account. So I want you to think, what are the exact steps that lead to profit in my bank account? Now, while there may be like 25 steps that are required or actions that are taken by different individuals for profit to arrive in your bank account, I'd really like for you to chunk it down into 4 to 6 core steps. Things that I see that are common are: 1, we have to capture a lead or generate a lead. 2, we have to convert that lead. 3, we have to fulfill and deliver on what we promised. And 4, then we finally collect the money and deposit it into the bank account. So think through what the major milestones are to you achieving profit. And I actually want you to pause the video right now. It will really be so much more meaningful for you if you pause the video, and whether it takes you 3 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I want you to think about your business, and I want you to identify these steps and what your unique path to profit looks like. Go ahead and do that now. All right, assuming that you've done that, thank you for doing that. I'm going to tell you about one of my best friend's businesses that he ran a few years ago and how he used the PIPES methodology to grow his business and some mistakes he made along the way that hopefully we can help you avoid. So he ran a training and education company in the real estate industry. So people who are wanting to just get into real estate investing, he provided a lot of training and resources to do that. So let me tell you about their path to profit and what it looked like for them. So the first thing they had to do was generate a registration. So they would try and get someone to register for free to attend a live event at a hotel in their geographical area. That was step 1, and they did a really good job at that. The next thing was to get the registrant to actually attend. See, a lot of people will say, yeah, I'll be there, but without any skin in the game, having registered for free, it was a really tough job to get people to actually attend. That was the second step in their process. The next step, when someone did attend, was to actually sell them a membership and a subscription to the software that they had developed. Once someone had upgraded, the most important thing for them to do was to actually deliver and fulfill on that subscription. From there, only members would be invited to a special event, and at the event, they would sell done-for-you systems, coaching and private mentoring, and those were the really big ticket items. Now let me tell you how they did in each of these areas, and we're going to try and identify what the constraint was. What was the small pipe that was limiting their growth? So first, on the generation side, lead generation side, they generated within a couple of years 45,000 leads. 45,000 people who raised their hand and said, yes, I'd like to come to your seminar at a hotel near me. From there, they got 60% of their attendees to actually attend. Now, you might be thinking, well, so right there's already a bottleneck. They're not getting 100%. Now, if you've ever been in this industry of presenting at hotels, you know that that's about double the industry standard. So they're actually doing quite well. From there, they would get, of the people who showed up to the seminar, they would get 15% of them to actually upgrade and purchase the software. Now, here's the kicker. 30%, only 30% of the people who purchased the software actually stuck with it, as opposed to the 70% who canceled. Of the 30% who remained, 50% of those actually came back for another event, a special members-only event, which is quite good. And then lastly, at that event where they were selling the big ticket items, 12% of all the attendees purchased those big ticket items. We're talking $10,000 coaching packages. So what does that look like as it relates to our pipes analogy? Let's have a look. So first, we've got the lead generation, which is solid. And then again, as far as getting those who registered to attend, they were doing a phenomenal job, way better than the industry and what you see. So that's a very large pipe. It's not limiting it in any way. Next, they were able to sell their subscription, which they did a decent job at doing. It's pretty common in this type of scenario to maybe close 30% of the room. You don't really ever see 100% of the room, but 30% is common. So let's say they were operating at 40–50% capacity there, maybe somewhat of a restriction. The next is delivering the software, and they did okay there. And then you've got the member-only attendance. So getting half the people to go to an event, again, is actually pretty good. And then, like I said, selling 30% of a room on a small ticket item is solid. If you're selling 12% of the room on large 10K packages, you're actually doing really well. Now, if we look at these percentages and we say, okay, where's the bottleneck in the business? It's easy for people to lean to two places. They always look at the smallest percentage, 12% for the high ticket or 15% on actually selling the membership. But that's not the bottleneck. The bottleneck these percentages cannot be compared to each other because they're not relatable items. You have to compare these percentages relative to the industry standard. Whatever niche or industry you're operating in, you kind of need to figure out those numbers and know if what you're doing is within the norm. The real kicker here was delivering the membership and software. 30% retention is horrendous. They really ought to be at 90% or above. Now, despite that fact, this company generated millions of dollars in revenue. Had they focused all of their time and attention on delivering the software and fulfilling on the promises of that initial investment, and you had 3 times the amount of people moving forward into the events and being pitched on the big ticket items, they easily could have recouped. We sat down and did the math together. Had they just retained 90%, which is very doable, he would have stood to made like $3.2 million more. That's what he left on the table. That's what he left on the table by not paying attention to what the numbers were telling him and identifying what was the constraint in his system, what was limiting that growth and limiting the profit from just flowing. So what I want to do is take another quick break. I want to ask you to do something for me. Before you move on to the next video, I want you to write down, you should have your path to profit sitting in front of you. I want you to look at those stages. And you may or may not know your exact numbers yet, the percentages and conversion, and that's okay. But I want you to try and identify what you feel is the constraint in your business, okay? We'll go ahead and use our guts this one time, because later on in the training, you'll figure out how to do this with the actual numbers. But I want you to write down what you believe your constraint is. Thanks for doing that. Now I'm going to ask for one more small commitment, and that is this. I want you to write this down, word for word. I, and then your first name, will focus my energy and my efforts on addressing the constraint in my business that is currently limiting my growth. See, as entrepreneurs, we get pulled in a lot of different directions. There are a million things calling our attention. There are info products on this, on that, and everything seems like a great idea. If we just implemented everything, our business would certainly grow, right? Here's the problem. As a small business, we're extremely limited with the resources, aka capital or funds. We've got to make sure we're receiving a return for every dollar that we invest. If you have a constraint in your business, and let's say in the case of my friend here, it's retention, You cannot fix retention by pouring more leads in the top of the funnel. You'll continue to hit that bottleneck and it's going to strain your growth. So let's say you're getting 100 leads a month and you can only follow up with 50 of them and you can only really fulfill on 20. You'd be better off dialing back your lead generation and focusing both your time and your money on your constraint, which is retaining members. So once you've identified a constraint, commit to yourself to not get distracted by other things in the business that could be done. Because right now there is one thing that's limiting your growth, and that is the most important thing to pour all of your time, energy, and money behind until you're able to remove that constraint from your business. And again, let the profit flow. Now, once you do that, once you remove a constraint, something really interesting happens, and that is a new constraint, sooner probably than later, will present itself, and it becomes a bit of a game. The moment that you fix your follow-up, suddenly you're following up at scale, you can now handle more leads and you're not generating enough leads, so that's the constraint, and you go address that. And then you're signing up so many people, maybe you don't have the bandwidth or the team members to help onboard, and now that's a constraint. This is a really fun game to play, guys, but it allows you to be single-focused. Like I said, as entrepreneurs, we just get pulled so many ways. With this mindset and this methodology, you can truly be single-focused and know with a surety that you will move the needle quicker and more successfully than by doing any other activity.